So we received, God damn it, hold on. Nothing cops love more than doing the whoop, 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 whoop.
They're all just aspiring DJs. They just love to, live and vicariously through another shitty job. Sup, nerds? It's basketball. Welcome to Horse, a basketball podcast about everything except for the wins and losses. My name is Mike Schubert, and I'm joined by my trusted co-host. The Super Bowl happening yesterday to me being incapable of caring less. It's Adam Amawala. Adam, how's it going?
Well, it's going fine, and future me did, in fact, watch the game, but mainly for the Rihanna halftime show.
That is worth tuning into, I would say. Yeah, the only thing that I'm maybe going to do with the Super Bowl is that the building that we're currently staying in, where we're doing our sublet in New York, they have like one of those lounge things where they're going to play the game and have free food. Kelly and I might go up, get some free food, and then dip.
There you go.
So I think that will be the furthest extent of my Super Bowl celebrations, and I think I'm probably doing it right.
There you go.
Now, Super Bowl is obviously football. We're not talking about that. We're talking about basketball. We've got a lot of fun basketball things to cover in this episode. We've got trade deadline stuff. There's other drama in the NBA. We have a fun interview. Let's get prepared for all of these things that we're going to be covering in the Teal Memorial Locker Room. The Teal Memorial Locker Room also has a bunch of free food if you want to watch the Super Bowl, or if you just want free food.
Oh, I didn't. Do we have caterers in there?
Yeah, I think it's got all those fun little hors d'oeuvres that you would get at a wedding, and they come through and they've got little pigs in a blanket or crab rangoons or little like bruschettas.
It's like being in an airport lounge.
Ooh, man. I feel like airport lounges have gone a step down in the States, I got to say.
It's true.
I feel like the Seattle one used to be pretty good. And then I was there recently and it was quite disappointing. Internationally, though, still pretty good. They're firing on all cylinders. The food in the Indian ones that I was at, quality stuff. And it's just like, a big old buffet thing. America, step up your game. You know who does not need to step up their game?
Our patrons. They're already kicking ass.
Yes, all of our patrons are kicking ass. Thank you to all of our patrons who are supporting the show, and especially thank you to our producer-level patrons, Polly Burge, Kendra Hadley, Salvatore Test, Trust the Process, Siobhan Ellsbury, He Sells Seashells, Don't Go Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Roast Beef Debris, Cade the Conqueror, Basketball is Life 2, Michaela Loves Allison, Denver Steam Nuggets, Anna Borgeli, Weird Questions, Stephanie Curry for 3.
Oh, hello. Bang.
Lobster Biscuit, Hi Trish, Ginger Spurs Boy, Nicole Arsenal, Something Mean About the Knicks, Stubby Boardman Gets Paid, and Chase Underulo.
Stephanie Curry, eh?
Just this could be the alternate universe where Stephanie was on Full House, right? Wasn't that one of the sisters on Full House?
I believe so. Stephanie Tanner.
Yeah, so this is the offshoot where was Stephanie Tanner the middle child in Full House? I did not watch a lot of Full House.
I think so. I think it's Jodie Sweetin was Stephanie. But also, Bay Area that works with Steph. So I think it's all working here.
Ah, yeah. The farthest of my Full House knowledge is that I've been to the houses that they did the outside Full House shot for. And the people who owned it repainted it, so it doesn't even look the same. So it's a pointless tourist trap.
It's true. I've actually done several Zoom shows with Jodie Sweetin, and she's very nice, but I'm just not starstruck because I didn't ever watch the show. Yeah. But I'm sure we're going to get some hate from people who are big Full House / Fuller House fans. To each their own,
Yeah, look, I'm not going to yuck anyone's yum. I think I was just like a little too young for it, and my sister, who was older, didn't get into it, so I never got into it. So just wasn't for me. But you know what is for me?
Getting money from sponsors.
It is getting money from sponsors. This episode of Horse is brought to you by Shaker and Spoon. Shaker and Spoon is a delivery kit service for making fancy cocktails. All you need to do is supply the booze, and they supply everything else. They give you ingredients, they give you instructions, and they do enough so that you can make 4 servings of 3 different drinks that all use the same alcohol. It is fantastic. It's a fun way to have people over. Do it for a party. Do it for if you're just having some folks over. Do it if you just want to learn how to make cocktails. It's a fun time. They make it super simple. You get to keep the recipe cards forever. It's fantastic. All the drinks are very different, which is cool. You get to see all the different things you can make with whiskey or whatever. And you can get $20 off your first box if you go to shakerandspoon.com/horse. That is shakerandspoon.com/horse. You'll get $20 off your first box. And that's about 50%. The boxes are between $40 and $50. Good stuff. Good deal. Why not do it? shakerandspoon.com/horse.
Do it.
Now, before we get into Full Court Press, you got anything up on the horizon? Anything you're looking to plug at this moment in time? Maybe our Horse Live show that's coming up?
Yeah. I think the main thing to plug is that we are doing a Horse live stream show that will also be available after the fact if you're not able to watch it live. But this will be on Wednesday, March 1st at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We may not be in the same place, but I think we will be in the same time zone when that is happening. And do you want to tell the people what we're thinking of doing, or should we keep it a surprise?
No, let's say it because it'll build a lot of hype. So we've made reference to this many times on the show that in a previous NBA All-Star game, Common did these very weird slant rhymey intros with just horrible, horrible puns for these players. Like, oh, he's out here winning lots of games. It's the kid from Akron, LeBron James. Mm-hmm. And what Adam and I are going to do is we are going to make bad Common dad joke slant rhyme couplets for all 75 players that were elected to the NBA 75 greatest 75 players of all time team for the NBA's 75th anniversary last year. We will each come up with rhymes for every single player on that list, and then the people in attendance in the crowd will vote on who they think is better, and then we'll keep score and see who wins as the best/worst pun maker. It's one of those, like, we can't give a correct answer for how you should vote, so we'll just have to see. It's very much whose line the points don't matter, but we'll still crown a winner. Why not?
Yeah, why not? It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so if you want to get tickets to that right now, you can go to bit.ly/horse3123. So that is all lowercase horse and then the numbers 3123, because that's the date when the show happens. And the last time I didn't add the year at the end of the link, it went to some weird merch site. So it's bit.ly/horse3123.
Indeed. Other than that, I still have the same stuff that I am promoting. I'm going to be in Colorado in March. I'm going to be in Las Vegas in April, still trying to line up some shows there. I just found out that I'm going to be in Chattanooga, Tennessee in August. That'll be kind of interesting. And I'm sure many other places as well, but you can look all of that up on any of my social media or at my website at adammamawala.com/standup. What about you?
I've got shows in California. Got those 3 February shows in San Diego, LA, and then San Francisco. Technically 4 shows because LA is 2 shows same night. But then I'm doing Europe shows as well, and they're basically all locked in. At the time of recording, the only one with ticket sales live is Dublin, but we're going to Dublin, London, Amsterdam, Oslo, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Berlin, and Munich. Tickets will be coming live over the next couple of days or so. So if you go to thenewsolympian.com/live or potterlesspodcast.com/live, you can get tickets to those shows. It's going to be a fun time, and I'm excited to travel around and explore and meet European listeners. Woohoo!
That is very, very cool.
I am so stoked. And I'm also stoked for this episode's NBQ&A. What's our NBQ&A, Adam?
All right, so we got a question on Twitter from a perhaps a future listener, current listener, but it seems like a future patron if we answer their question. So this is pretty exciting stuff here. We can and will be bought. If you promise us that you're going to become a patron, we'll probably answer your question. But this question comes from Sally at Sally T on Twitter. And the question says, B-ball podcasters love to be like on and off the court. Numbers don't tell the full story. We shouldn't rely on them. But, and then they launch into a whole thing about a player's on and off the court numbers as a case for how good or bad the player is. At Shub17, I will become a patron if you discuss this. So we're going to hold you to it. But here is us discussing this. We are a podcast that talks a lot about, like, it's not about the wins and losses. I think we try to stick to that when we can. But do you have an answer for that? Because I think I understand the question and I have my response. But what about you?
Yeah. So first, shout out to Sally Tamarkin, who is a big Sixers fan. And actually, the timing of this is very serendipitous. One of the guests on the most recent episode of Meddling Adults that just came out this past Wednesday by the time you're listening to this. But I think this is a very valid question. On-off numbers is a thing that you'll hear either on basketball podcasts or see in basketball articles, where you look at how a player's team performs when they are playing and when they are not playing. And I agree with Sally that saying that on-off numbers don't tell the full story is true, because it's a weird statistic that is reliant on how good or bad your teammates are, and then how good or bad specifically the other people who play when you aren't playing are. So it can be really confusing because certain players will be the best player and then with all bench guys, or certain players will play with the starters and they're not contributing as much. But if they're on the court at the same time as James Harden and Joel Embiid, like, yeah, your on-off numbers are going to be much better because when you're on, so are these other guys. So it's a weird statistic because it just doesn't have a lot of like control group type stuff that you would like to see. It's not just a clean, he shoots this percentage from the field, she gets this many rebounds per game. It's very subjective and very circumstantial, and it does feel hard to analyze someone's performance based off of it. So yeah, for podcasters to be like, we shouldn't do it, but then to do it does feel unfair to me.
Yeah, to me, it's a little bit like people caring about RBIs in baseball, where it's like, yes, you have to get hits and you have to get on base in order to get RBIs, but the amount of runs you're able to drive in, RBI standing for runs batted in, that is dependent on who is on base in front of you. So like part of it is a metric of how good you are, but part of it is a metric of how good your teammates are. I do think over the course of a season, on off does matter. Like I think looking at it for one game can be really misleading, but I do think generally speaking, if you look at it over the course of a season, it does give you some sense of how valuable a person is on or off the court, but there are so many other factors that it makes it not the best stat. So I definitely understand the question.
Yeah, I feel like it can work if you are just looking maybe at one team and you're trying to compare very specific things, like one player in with other people and then a different player in with the same other 4 people. Like if you bring it more close together and make it more specific, I think it might make more sense, but it's hard to look at James Harden's on-off numbers versus Bojan Bogdanovic's on-off numbers because the rest of the Pistons are far worse than the rest of the Sixers. So of course Bojan's on-off numbers are going to look much different. When he's off, they're going to be very bad. When he's on, they're going to be much better by comparison. Whereas, I don't know, the Sixers might have a great game while James Harden is sitting because what if Tyrese Maxey scores a lot of points? What if Joel Embiid scores a lot of points while James Harden's in foul trouble? It's hard to compare. It's a very apples and oranges type statistic. And I feel like plus minus is a little bit better. Plus minus is one where it's just literally when you are on the court, does your team outscore or get outscored by the opponent? And if you're on the court and your team scores 2 points, doesn't matter who scores it, and then you get subbed out right afterwards, you were a +2. If you are on the court and the other team scored 4 points in a row and your team didn't score any, and then you got subbed out, you were a -4. And that's very much like you were on the court and this is how the team did. And it's more straightforward.
Right. Yeah.
So all of this is to say, I think Sally is correct in that you shouldn't start a sentence with saying on-off numbers aren't fair and then talk about them like they are fair. I think they are a little unfair. And unless you're putting lots of caveats in there, I don't know how helpful it really is.
Right. But having said that, you better be a patron. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. You gotta be a person of your word. So we keep the receipts.
Mm-hmm. We would hope. We'll badger you on Twitter every day until you join. But thank you for your question. And now with NB Q&A complete, we can get into Full Court Press. Get it like the news.
I do.
So we've got some not fun news. We've got some interesting, spicy news. And then we've got all sorts of trade deadline stuff. I think we go in that order. The unfun stuff is that Ja Morant is making what I would call poor decisions in that he is really trying to show that he's a tough guy. And look, everyone is well within their rights to put on whatever persona they want. And I don't know his exact childhood and all of that, but he had a recent situation that got very conveniently released on Sunday night after big news of a trade broke, very much seeming like a let's try to sweep this under the rug kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And there was a report that after a Grizzlies-Pacers game, Pacers security filed a complaint that people in an SUV, which contained Ja Morant and some of his friends, or at least people in his crew, they were firing a laser out of a window that appeared to be, whether it was actually attached to a gun or if it was just like a laser pointer implying, it was pointing at people that worked for Pacers security as if to imply, we have a laser scope pointed on you. And this happened because there was an altercation between Ja Morant and AJ Nembhard, who's the backup point guard or maybe even the third string point guard. Like he's a bench player, rookie, second round draft pick on the Indiana Pacers. And they were beefing and there was arguments and stuff. And I guess it carried after the game and then somehow extended to people beyond just this player. And it's just a weird situation that you don't want to see from any player. You don't want to see from any person. You don't want to see from someone who is a fun face of the league that kids look up to type. Like he's the new kind of Steph where like all the kids love Steph. Now a lot of kids like Ja Morant. He's fun. He's exciting. He's cool. He is personable. He's got new shoes coming out. And for him to be getting into this kind of thing just feels, one, like bad in terms of role model stuff, but two, bad in terms of you're making so much money. Like why would you try to act like you're a tough guy? I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a little strange because the details of this whole thing are kind of murky and seemingly intentionally so. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those like you're only as good as the company you keep. And I think a lot of times when somebody gets money in any part of life, but particularly with athletes, there are a lot of people that are kind of hangers on and want to be along for the ride. And unfortunately, if you associate yourself with people who are doing things that are dangerous and or illegal, eventually it's going to reflect poorly on you. And in some cases, when you talk about someone like a Gilbert Arenas or that sort of thing, it ends people's careers. And I think, I hope that is not what happens for Ja Morant. I love watching him. I don't know much about him personally, but as far as being a basketball fan, he is among the most electric players to watch in the league right now. So yeah, it's not a good situation. It doesn't sound good. The more I hear about it, the less I want to hear about it because it's really troubling. But yeah, maybe this will be somewhat of a wake up call in terms of the people that Ja wants to associate with, or at least being able to have a conversation with them to be like, hey, I make a ton of money. I plan to continue to make a ton of money. Please don't fuck my shit up.
Yeah, the problem is that this year in particular, this is like the third Ja Morant story. Like if this was just a one and done story, maybe you think it's a misunderstanding or something. And even Ja Morant tweeted something like, oh, they did an investigation and they found nothing happened. But earlier this year, there was one report that he had gotten into a physical altercation with like a 17-year-old kid who was playing pickup with him at his house over the summer. And just sounded like a normal sort of like basketball argument. You know, he threw a ball at him. They were like throwing blows at each other, just like a normal kind of like pickup scuffle, but not something you want to see when you're an NBA star and a teenager. And then Ja Morant had the thing where someone was talking trash to him on Twitter. And he said something like, it's free to see how hollows feel, which is something that implies shooting someone with a gun. And look, I get into Twitter beefs and arguments with people online sometimes. I don't threaten to shoot them. And so it's just like all those things happening in the same season is not a great look. And I think the best take on it is something that Shannon Sharp said recently, and we'll put a link to this on the episode page at horsehoops.com. Shannon Sharp is a talking head on FS1, and he talks about a lot of different sports, but for this particular situation, he's along the same lines of what you were just saying of you're making so much money, Ja Morant, like why are you risking it? Why are you putting that in jeopardy? You do this sort of work in terms of being in the NBA and working hard to get a big contract and endorsement deals and all these things. You do this stuff so that you don't have to resort to a type of whatever it is type mentality. Like you're in a great financial position. Why would you jeopardize that by trying to act like someone that you're not or that you don't have to be? It just feels very unnecessary. And on top of all of those things, you know, you're a role model to kids, whether you asked for it or not. That's just what happens to famous athletes. And hopefully this could maybe, like you said, be a wake-up call. And maybe this will just be the last sort of close call Ja Morant situation we see, because no one wants to see it get worse. Nobody wants to see something bad happen. We just want him to play basketball and everything be okay, nobody get hurt, and everything be fine.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
Now, speaking of wanting people to just focus on playing basketball, Kyrie Irving has been traded to the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, since our last episode, and people have speculated as soon as they heard about the trade, like, oh, I guess Horst must have just recorded. And I have no doubt that something eventful will happen as soon as we get off today. But
of course,
Kyrie Irving, within the past week, news broke that he had requested to be traded in advance of the trade deadline, which was, as you were listening to this past Thursday, the 9th. And yeah, that news broke, and within several days he had been traded to the Dallas Mavericks. He wanted to go to the Lakers, it seemed like, but why don't you fill us in on the details of the trade and how this all came to be?
So basically what happened was Kyrie was in contract negotiations with the Brooklyn Nets, his current team, and at the end of this season, his contract is going to expire, and he was trying to negotiate stuff with the Nets. I don't know if he was eligible for an extension or if they were just talking about what he could sign at the end of the year if he wanted to stay with the Nets. And the Nets are at the point where they didn't want to deal with Kyrie Irving anymore. After all of the anti-Semitic stuff and the anti-vax stuff and just generally being someone that you can't rely on, the Nets didn't want to commit large contract dollars and long amounts of years to him. So apparently they offered him some sort of contract that was contingent on the Nets winning the championship, basically saying like, yeah, if we win the title, we'll bring you back on the team. But other than that, we would like to part ways. And apparently that was so insulting that Kyrie Irving, rather than just finish out the year and then sign with a new team, he said, I want to get traded, which I can understand that sort of desire. However, you're already someone that has forced his way out of many other teams. What team is going to want to give you a big contract after you've proven again that you're not necessarily big on commitment and stuff like that? So he said he didn't want to be with the Nets anymore.
Right.
He apparently didn't provide a list of preferred teams that he wanted to be traded to, but Joe Tsai, the Nets owner, who has been very upset with all of the Kyrie shenanigans of late, apparently there were leaks that he intentionally did not trade Kyrie to the Lakers because it was assumed that the Lakers were Kyrie's preferred team to be traded to. Joe Tsai decided that he wanted to trade him somewhere else, so he shipped him off to Dallas, Texas. And honestly, I don't like the trade for the Mavs because I think the people they gave up are better than Kyrie Irving, and they're certainly more dependable.
And so who did they give up? It was a package including Spencer Dinwiddie and then
Dorian Finney-Smith, and then a couple of picks, a first-round pick, and then a couple of second-round picks, and then maybe a swap of sorts, but basically Dorian Finney-Smith, who's a very good three-point shooter and defender, Spencer Dinwiddie, who's a solid backup point guard, those two dudes for Kyrie Irving. And yeah, Kyrie's better than both of those guys, but I don't know. I mean, when you have...
I like it for the Nets, and it's kind of cool that Spencer Dinwiddie gets to return to where he broke out a few years ago.
Yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie has been a great sport about this. He tweeted that apparently his kid was asking about when they get to go home because Dinwiddie was in Brooklyn for so many years. So it's a cute little silver lining to it. And I'm sure the Brooklyn Nets fans will be happy to have him back, and they're probably very thankful to not have to deal with Kyrie anymore. But it's just very funny, and the whole Kyrie saga just continues to make me just so happy that I had a very silver lining approach to when I found out the Knicks didn't get Kevin Durant and Kyrie. I thought, Kyrie's got all this flat earth stuff and he's so dramatic. Like, there's a chance that this just like gets really bad and maybe it's okay. Can you imagine if these two dudes were on the Knicks, like how much clowning would be happening? I'm so thankful that it didn't happen. I'm so thankful.
Yeah, I believe when the news broke that he wanted a trade, you quote tweeted that tweet and posted from the Horse account, and I quote, all caps, at LOL.
It was actually ha 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 ha, all 280 characters of ha ha ha.
Fair enough. Same idea, though.
Yeah, I'm quite thankful. And for you and I, as people that would love to scoop up Luka Doncic, this is pretty great. Like, if Kyrie just goes into Dallas, it's already a bad organization. Mark Cuban has already publicly stated that he thinks Kyrie Irving is crazy, his words, for his anti-Semitic slurs. And, the Mavs have a interesting history of all sorts of fun allegations and stuff. It's just like a terrible situation. I think it's going to be great in terms of Luka not enjoying being there anymore and wanting to leave, and then maybe wanting to join the New York Knicks or the Chicago Bulls.
I would not hate it.
So with that complete, we're going to pause our recording here. We're recording this right now on Monday, February 6th. We're going to record the rest of this full court press after the trade deadline completes this Thursday. And we are here. It is now February 9th at 3:19 p.m. Eastern time, meaning that everything should be safe and the trade deadline has passed and the trades are complete. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening. Mainly it's just the Kevin Durant trade, and then, some other stuff happened too. Adam, how do you feel?
I feel a little frustrated. The Bulls were one of only two teams out of 30 to not do literally anything. There was a little bit of chatter that would have been very interesting for you involving Zach LaVine getting traded to the Knicks. That did not happen. And I think you're probably happy about it. Yeah.
Thank Christ. Yes, I would have despised that.
Yeah. So it's a little weird to be in the position the Bulls are and be essentially a 500 team not going anywhere, pretty rudderless, and to do nothing. Like, either you think that you can win with this team and you're going to add, or you think that you can't and you should blow it up. The worst place to be is right in the middle, which apparently is where the Bulls want to be. Maybe they didn't get a good enough offer. Who can say? Yeah. But if you thought the Kyrie news was the biggest of the deadline, we woke up today, or I don't know when you heard it, But I woke up this morning to the news of Kevin Durant having been traded to the Phoenix Suns, and a lot of other stuff has happened as well, but that's certainly the big one.
Right. I was in the, all right, let me start getting ready for bed situation. I'm here traveling with Kelly's family right now. And it was just about the time I was winding down. And then I saw some people tweeting Kevin Durant hype related things, most notably Aaron Edwards, who was on our show before. And we honestly got to get him back just so he can scream about KD being on his beloved Phoenix Suns. I saw him tweet something about KD and I was like, no, what? And then it happened. And then I stayed up for 3 more hours, or at least 2 more hours. I went to bed at 3 because it was just like, there's just so much stuff and I was reading everything and all that. So, all right, here's literally everything that happened. The Celtics traded away Noah Vonleh and cash for a 2nd-round pick. Great. The Lakers made the Rui Hachimura trade and they got Rui, and the Wizards got Kendrick Nunn and some picks. Okay, we talked about the Kyrie trade. The Heat traded for our favorite player, cash considerations. They traded Dwayne Dedmon and a 2nd-round pick to the Spurs. The Spurs just becoming everyone's recycling bin this trade deadline. Very funny. Bunch of players that they don't want, but they're also getting a bunch of picks. They're just cashing in and tanking so clearly. It's pretty fun. The Nets traded Kessler, Edwards, and our favorite player cash considerations to the Sacramento Kings. So cash considerations is now both a Miami Heat player and a Sacramento Kings player. My beloved New York Knicks traded for Josh Hart, and they traded Cam Reddish, a 1st-round pick, and Ryan Arcidiacono and Svi Mihaliuk all over to the Portland Trail Blazers. The Spurs traded away Jakob Poeltl to the Toronto Raptors for Kem Birch and some picks. The Kevin Durant trade, obviously, we'll get to in a second. The Celtics traded Justin Jackson and 2 picks for Mike Muscala to the Thunder. The Milwaukee Bucks traded 5 2nd-round picks for Jay Crowder, who was a very temporary member of the Brooklyn Nets after the Kevin Durant trade. The Lakers traded Thomas Bryant, who called for the ball during LeBron's shot.
Hey, fuck around, find out. You know what I mean?
That he made to set the record, which this shows how wild the trade deadline is that we are going this entire episode without talking about LeBron's incredible feat of overtaking this record. We'll have to cover it in the next one, but it was cool. Cream's statement about it was cool. I got to watch it live, not in person, but on TV. That was cool.
Yeah, same.
So that was some fun stuff. Thomas Bryant got traded to the Nuggets for Davon Reed and some 2nd-round picks, 3 2nd-round picks. Darius Bazley is now a member of the Phoenix Suns. The Thunder got Dario Saric and a 2nd-round pick for him. Bones Highland, who is a disgruntled member of the Denver Nuggets, is now a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. Perfect to go from grumpy situation to a different grumpy situation. He was traded for 2 2nd-round picks. Hawks traded Justin Holiday, Frank the Tank Kaminsky, and 2 2nd-round picks for Garrison Matthews and Bruno Fernando. The Lakers traded Pat Bev and a 2nd-round pick for Mo Bamba, which is pretty funny to trade an instigator for an instigator, since Mo Bamba recently said something so mean to Austin Rivers that he started an entire fight with Mo Bamba while he was on the bench. So I don't know what he said, but oof.
Whatever he said, there was an image of Markelle Fultz's face, and it must have been pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. Must have been spicy. The Pelicans traded Devontae Graham and 4 2nd-round picks for Josh Richardson to the Spurs. The Clippers traded away Reggie Jackson and a 2nd-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets for Mason Plumlee. And Gary Payton II is now a Golden State Warrior again. The Blazers traded him to the Golden State Warriors for Kevin Knox and 5 2nd-round picks. 2nd-round picks, I don't know if it's Joe Biden's inflation or what, but 2nd-round picks were getting thrown around like they were just absolutely nothing.
Now, I don't seem to recall you mentioning the D'Angelo Russell trade. Did that somehow get lost in the shuffle?
That is because I've been saving the 3-team trades for the very end.
Oh, no. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on your toes there.
You did not step on my toes. I appreciate you making sure I didn't miss some of these big ones. 3-team trade. The Los Angeles Lakers receive D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. The Utah Jazz receive Russell Westbrook, who has been on record stating that Utah Jazz fans are racist. They also receive Juan Toscano Anderson, Damian Jones, the Lakers' 2027 first-round pick, and the Minnesota Timberwolves receive Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and 3 second-round picks. A trade where I don't know why these teams necessarily did this. It feels like the Lakers didn't give up that much and got a lot back. They got 3 pretty solid players. It's an interesting situation. I think it was a type of thing where You'll have this happen sometimes with these teams that have so many picks. This was the Thunder previously. This is currently the Spurs and the Jazz. You have so many first round picks from all these trades that you literally run out of spots, that I think you have some teams, once they have enough, they aren't looking for more. So that's the only thing I can guess with the Jazz, is like they're more interested in not having long-term contracts than they are getting a couple of extra first-round picks, because they will be incapable of using them. Like you saw the Thunder do this in the past couple of drafts. They just have so many and they don't have enough roster spots that they'll like trade pick number 20 and pick number 22 just so that they can move up to like pick 16. Like, you know, they just would rather get a slightly better guy than two good guys because they just don't have the roster space. So that's the only thing I can guess with that one. But D'Angelo Russell in a weird workaround being back on the Lakers is pretty funny.
Right.
Now, another 3-team trade was the Indiana Pacers receiving Jordan Nwora, George Hill, Serge Ibaka, and 2 second-round picks. The Bucks receiving Jay Crowder, and the Nets receiving 3 second-round picks. That was a thing, and this happened for a couple of trades where you first have a 2-team trade in place, and then it gets upgraded to a 3-team trade when you're trying to move around either some players or some picks and stuff like that. So that was the case for this one. Started as a 2-team, became a 3-team afterwards. And then you also have a 3-team trade where Matisse Thybulle is now a member of the Blazers. Svi Mykhailiuk and 2 second-round picks are now members of the Charlotte Hornets. And the Philadelphia 76ers received Jalen McDaniels and 2 second-round picks. Another 3-team trade, Saddiq Bey is now on the Hawks. James Wiseman is now on the Pistons. And the Golden State Warriors are now owners of Kevin Knox and 5 second-round picks. Wait, I'm confused. Oh, they did that, and then they traded that for Gary Payton II. Got it. And then the final trade is the Clippers now have Eric Gordon and 3 second-round picks. The Grizzlies now have Luke Kennard, and the Houston Rockets have John Wall and Danny Green. John Wall, who recently went on a podcast and said that his experience with the Rockets, who refused to play him because he was old when he was on the team, he said that the experience of playing with the Rockets was, quote, trash. Yes, he made a raspberry noise and then said trash. He said that his experience with them was trash. And now he's a member of the Houston Rockets again.
If there were a way we could spell that out, I feel like that would be a great episode title.
Yeah, maybe like I've always done like PLDLDLD, like that,
you know, as a raspberry noise.
Oh, that could be good. The title of this episode might be Raspberry Noise Trash.
Not to be confused with roast beef debris.
No, of course. But that is all of the stuff that happened at the trade deadline. It was a wild one, but now let's, for the remaining time here, talk about the big one, the Kevin Durant trade.
Yeah, and real quick, let me just you pronounce a lot of names there, and from what I can tell, you pronounce them pretty damn well. So great job. Also, truly an absurd day for me to buy tickets for a Nets game. I'm going to the Nets game.
It's going to be an interesting
Bulls
one
Nets.
for you.
I guess all the Bulls will be playing. We might see if Zach LaVine is a little grumpy after all the rumors today. But anyway, let's talk KD and get on out of here.
Yes. So Kevin Durant was traded to the Phoenix Suns, which was interesting because he was rumored when he first requested to leave the Nets in the summer, he really wanted to make his way to the Suns. But unfortunately, it was right after the big Rudy Gobert trade that broke the market, where Rudy Gobert was traded for so much stuff that people are like, well, if they got all these picks for Rudy Gobert, we want everything in the world for Kevin Durant. And then that didn't really happen. But now with the Kyrie situation, Kevin Durant wanted to get out of there. The Nets really wanted to be able to either build around KD or rebuild. They went with rebuild, and they ended up trading Kevin Durant to the Phoenix Suns. And in return, they received Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, who they later traded away for some picks, 4 first-round picks completely unprotected, and a 2028 pick swap. So the Brooklyn Nets were in a really bad situation where, in order to get James Harden on their team, they kind of traded a whole lot of stuff to the Houston Rockets, and it was looking pretty bad. But now after trading Kyrie and Kevin Durant, it's not like they fully restocked, but they kind of are at baseline even in terms of having picks back. So they made this big trade. Kevin Durant is now a member of the Phoenix Suns. It's an interesting situation because how many people are left on the Suns? Like, obviously, they still have Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul and now Kevin Durant. But, like, is anyone left?
Not really, and that's the thing. Like the Nets made out pretty well in both of those deals, so it's kind of a good situation for them. Where obviously it goes without saying that their intention was to win a championship when they had Harden and Kyrie and KD on the same team. But having not done that, I feel like they're now setting themselves up to still be decently competitive at this moment, but also really good in the future. Or if they want to compete sooner, flip those first round picks again for bigger name players in the offseason or something. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's good to not have the drama of Kyrie anymore, and it sucks to not have Durant. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how much better this makes the Suns, knowing that they added Durant but also lost some big pieces.
Right. I think this is the situation where you raise the ceiling for sure, but then you also raise the chance of things blowing up. I feel like it expands their range of outcomes in a larger direction, because when you trade away two really solid players, Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, and even Jay Crowder, even though he was disgruntled and wasn't playing for the team, which was so funny because I predicted this in the drama draft where I said, oh, if Cam Johnson gets injured, Jay Crowder, who was upset that he was not starting because they wanted to start Cam Johnson instead, I was like, he could just be playing if Cam Johnson gets hurt. And he's been hurt for most of the year. So they had these three players that were depth. That's all gone.
Right.
But obviously Kevin Durant is one of the best players on earth. So if everybody stays healthy and if they pick up some other guys here and there, they'll be okay. But if anyone gets hurt, I think that's where that floor is, where if you just have fewer guys, It just makes each person that much more important to your chances of winning the title.
But yeah, all in all, I would say as eventful a trade deadline as I can remember, honestly.
Yeah, it was a big one. Just the fact that there were two star-studded superstar trades in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant in one trade deadline. Usually you just get one. And almost never do you get two from the same team, which is just truly ridiculous. It's wild. It was a big one, and it'll be very interesting to see how the Nets do. It'll be interesting to see how the Suns do. And I guess the Nets had been talking about maybe trying to trade some of the other people they received, whether it was Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson. Maybe they trade them in the offseason. Maybe, like you said, they exchange all these picks they got and they try to restart right away. Whatever it is, though, I, as a Knicks fan, am just very happy and thankful for the Nets existing, because no matter what happens, they always find a way to blow things up more drastically and more dramatically. It's like every 6 years they threaten and people are like, oh, the Nets are looking good now. And then it takes them 3 years and then everything blows up. I just appreciate that, recurring theme making me feel better. Yeah.
They're like the Clippers. They'll just never, they want to be the big brother. They're not going to be the big brother. It's the same as like the Mets Yankees dynamic. Like, yeah, the Mets spent a bunch of money, but have they won a World Series since 1986? They have not. So we shall see. But man, if you like spice, this was the trade deadline for you.
So that was a spicy one. We will have many more things to discuss in the future. We'll have to see how all of these trades work out. But that has been this very chunky, juicy full court press. And now we can get into our interview with Seth Rosenthal from Secret Base, which is a very fun one. Before that interview starts, you will hear some dynamically inserted ads, but once those are complete, we'll have the interview for the rest of the episode. So as mentioned, we have a very fun interview to close out this episode. I'm very excited to talk to this person who I've been hearing talk to me about NBA beef on videos for years upon years. It's Seth Rosenthal, a video producer for Secret Base. Seth, how's it going?
Going very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Excited to have you on the pod. Now, we tried to talk about beef a whole heck of a lot on this show. Beef is just something that can get everybody excited. When it came to making the beef history videos for SB Nation and now for Secret Base, how did that all come about, just from having the idea of, sports in general, but specifically I feel like it's a lot of basketball ones end up on the program. What kind of led to going from that into making it a regular recurring show on the platform?
It started before Secret Base, or even the platform that became called Secret Base started. So my job for a while was what they called like social video at the time. So, making those like 2-minute long square videos for Facebook with captions and stuff. And like, it was fairly cheap, quick turnaround content, but I did my best to try and make it worth someone's while instead of simply wasting their time. And so like one thing that we found was useful is if we could explain the news a little bit. If something had just happened then instead of merely being one of a million media outlets to be like, here's the thing that just happened, then we would try to be like, here's a little more background information, some actual research, some actual context to help you understand what happened. And so I think, I'm trying to remember the first time we did it, but this is like 2016, 2017. Maybe it was Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook, one player famously dirty, the other one suffering an injury because of Beverley playing a dirty style. I think it was that happened. And we were like, well, let's like step back and explain, Patrick Beverley's whole sort of reputation and mythos and where this type of guy comes from. And then obviously Russell Westbrook, what makes him special and why they're so different and how this conflict between people is interesting, not simply rehash what just happened last night. Maybe it wasn't that, maybe it was something else, but something from that era. And people took to it, people liked it. And in that job, in that sort of realm of work, it was nice to be like, I feel like I actually added something and I was not merely cheaply stealing people's attention the way a lot of people were on Facebook at the time. Thankfully, since then, I have gotten to make longer form, longer turnaround, more considered stuff where the mission statement is to make stuff we would actually want to watch and feel good about. And so Beef History has gotten to live on as a much longer form, more deeply considered series that is not rooted in let's explain what's happening right now, but let's explain and contextualize things that will help you understand the history of sports. They'll help you understand right now because a lot of the people involved in episodes of Beef History are still relevant in one way or another. But we have a slower turnaround and get to put in a lot more research, get to actually dig up stuff that's not really on the internet and that no one is really talking about anymore. And, ideally help people become richer, more entertained, more knowledgeable sports fans. And when they watch games or read more stories or see, new outcroppings of beef, they'll be like, oh, I kind of think I know where this comes from because I know the history between these people.
Yeah, that's so much of our whole angle in trying to appeal to people who aren't necessarily basketball or sports fans is to be like, we know you're skeptical, but we cannot overstate how similar the NBA is to Real Housewives.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I realized by watching one of the most recent ones you did, the XL Beef History, the two-parter with the Chicago Bulls and Jerry Krause versus Scottie Pippen. Adam, you're exactly right, because so much of the NBA is people getting on press conferences and then very intentionally saying something mean about someone that's essentially their coworker.
And
just
petty,
for the sole
pettiness
purpose.
really
yes, the
is,
pettiness.
Yeah.
But the whole directive is like, I'm going to say this mean thing on a podium just so that my boss or coworker, whoever hears it, and then maybe they'll change their mind. It's just a wild dynamic.
I think what I have found compelling about making Beef History, and hopefully people find compelling in watching it, is we've done I believe we just crossed 100 episodes of it.
Wow.
100 separate beeves between people. And that is an actual plural of the word.
Beeves?
Beeves is in the dictionary. It's, it's sort of secondary. It's like the third one. But each of those is different. They all have different themes and different qualities of the people involved that make them opposite, that make them contend with one another. A lot of those are really stupid, really, really stupid. Shaquille O'Neal and Dwight Howard have beef with each other because Shaq had this otherworldly persona where he was the best center in the NBA and, liked to pretend he was Superman and saw himself as a larger than life celebrity and really worked hard at becoming not just a great player, but an entertainer. And then Dwight Howard came into the league and he was the best center for a while and he kind of ripped it off. And Shaq has enough of a media platform now that he can go after a guy like that. And that's stupid. And to me, still very interesting. And I think because it takes its root in actual basketball and style of play and the success of the teams involved, but then bleeds out into pop culture, it's, I think, compelling, but it's stupid, which is fine. A lot of these aren't stupid. And I think a lot of these, at the surface, it's just people saying mean stuff to each other. But you gave the XL Beef History, the ones that Clara and Joe, my co-producers, did recently as an example. And the one Clara did about the history of Scottie Pippen and the Chicago Bulls, that's about labor and that's about race And that's about the dynamics of ownership and players and how money's involved and the history of the NBA salary cap. Like, there's a lot of really infantile, sort of trivial stuff at its surface. But if this stuff is done well, and it's not just a Facebook video, if we take the time to tell the whole story, I think that a lot of these allow you to not only understand sports better, but see the lines between sports and television, sports and pop culture, sports and politics, sports and your own work life, all of that stuff. Because a lot of the things that color these rivalries and these conflicts between people are very like real and resonant in a way that the actual gameplay might not be.
Yeah, I think it really expands to real life situations that, like we're saying, you don't have to be a sports fan to relate to, like the Shaquille O'Neal, JaVale McGee one. It's really about basically cyberbullying. It's just Shaquille O'Neal and JaVale McGee having beef because Shaq just ridiculed this man weekly on his television program / the internet, Shaq Didn't a Fool, and it legitimately hurt JaVale McGee's feelings. So I think that's what's really impressive about the series of videos, is that it's fun at times, but then also real stuff comes up and you guys don't shy away from covering them, or also having a video that at times is, oh, look at this silly thing that happened, but then also it got kind of ugly and we're not gonna delete that from the video just because it's not as funny to laugh at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've always been a very staunchly pro Shaq podcast, but there is a weird element of him where it's this like get off my lawn, punching down sort of thing that he does a lot to players who like aren't really deserving of the derision that he passes along. I think in the current media landscape where so much of the content we see constantly is fleeting, and kind of leaves you with more of an appetite, I feel like there is increasingly becoming a space for exactly what you all are doing, which is doing a real deep dive into something and covering all elements of it, kind of like the last week tonight model of, we are going to focus on one thing primarily. This is going to be what we talk about for 20 minutes, rather than just give you a taste of something and not really give you any other context.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope there continues to be an appetite for that. I think, I hope media companies and people trying to get into media look at Secret Base, which has been successful. Like from a financial standpoint, things are challenging overall, but like we have managed to create this little vault of attention and metric success that I hope lasts and hope allows me to keep my job for the foreseeable future. But yeah, people, I think, especially if they're just getting into sports, or especially if they can only watch a normal amount of sports and aren't obsessives, could benefit from a little bit of context and can feel more connected to what they're watching when they watch, if they learn some of the stories, and if they get, and not just stories, but like learn how the games work and learn the strategies involved and learn basic history in a way that is engaging. I've grown up obsessed with this stuff, and so a lot of it feels like second nature to me, or just feels like sort of onboard knowledge. But I've really enjoyed the challenge of interrogating my own beliefs and knowledge and like digging into the stuff I don't remember, and then B, finding a way to share that in a way that's both accessible to someone who's just trying to get into sports and honors the memory of someone who knows a lot more about the particular topic than I do. Because something as specific as like the history of the relationship between Shaq and JaVale McGee is something on which I can become an expert pretty quickly. That's a pretty specific topic, but like someone out there is a fan and cared about that stuff while it was happening. Obviously someone out there is those people or knows those people. And so I want to try to hit every level of the story to, make it accessible, but also, not dumb it down.
And I appreciate that Secret Base, it's not just beef history. You guys are making lots of videos that, one, kind of push the envelope of what can be a basketball YouTube video. You recently put up an hour and 20-minute documentary about the statistically worst winning percentage team ever, the Charlotte Bobcats.
Yes.
Like an incredible deep dive that I watched ear to ear smile the whole time. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it's an hour and change documentary from the folks who usually make 15 to 20-minute videos. Cool. And it was great.
Yes. John Boyce and Alex Rubenstein are special people. But even that, that is I think it's like an hour and a half of charts about the 2012 Charlotte Bobcats. And I think if and when we've tried to explain that to like our own employer, it's like, why on earth would anyone watch this? But the answer is that, John and Alex, and I got to help out with that one, didn't sit down and say, let's just barf out all these graphs and let's just, make this for nerds because we're nerds. Michael Jordan still owns that team. That's a story about the greatest player in the history of basketball being the governor of the worst team in the history of basketball. That is Shakespearean. It's a little puzzle to unlock, and sometimes you don't find an answer, but the stuff that happens on the court and the stuff that happens in stat sheets often has some real meat behind it, has some real human intrigue behind it. And it's not just like the glory of winning and the agony of defeat. It's not heroes and villains always. A lot of it is weirder than that and funnier than that and more complicated than that. I have found that people find it worth their time to get to the bottom of that. And so I've, when I'm lucky, I get to be a sort of conveyor of that feeling and that understanding.
Yeah. And I appreciate the angle, like you're saying, of it's not just what's on the court. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And I think that also shows in the other videos that Secret Base is making, Prism, where you look at a player and then all the different angles. I recently watched the Kyle Lowry one, and it's really interesting to watch, especially in a case like Kyle Lowry, who early in his career, people thought he had attitude issues or medical issues, or he was running into all these problems with coaches. And is it his fault? Is it their fault? And then he turned out to be a beloved Toronto Raptor, the greatest Raptor of all time, as you said in the video. And it's just a really interesting way to look at athletes taking the approach of, these aren't just people on the court. They're humans and they have human emotions. And no, they're not going to be perfect, and people can grow, and you can really look at someone from lots of different angles. And I think that that's just a refreshing approach to covering sports and sports history, as opposed to some of the stuff we'll see now on hot take type programs.
Yeah. I mean, sports coverage, for understandable reasons, comes with an unbelievable amount of recency bias. And so I often think of Secret Base, we're not really doing journalism. Like you said, we're not doing takes. I sort of think of us as reference material. And if you were to go look up Kyle Lowry or watch a Kyle Lowry game, or watch, like, for some reason, PTI is talking about Kyle Lowry, I don't think you're likely to get the sense of how people felt about that guy in 2010 and 2015 and 2020 and what his reputation was and just what his name meant. All we get is right now. And maybe there's a line on a Wikipedia page or and there's plenty of good journalism explaining that a little bit. But, when I make something like that, I want to try to be the definitive source of, like, here's this guy's reputation over the years. And now when you watch him, or when you think about him, or when one day you see his jersey retired, or maybe he'll be in the Hall of Fame or whatever, that's cool on its own. But there's a lot to that. His story is sort of this, like, palimpsest of just layers and layers of reputation. That the initial concept for that series was, like, the good part was we were going to take players who, if you were to look up Sean Livingston or Bo Jackson, you'd be like, oh, this was a great player whose legs fell apart. Oh, well. Brandon Roy, Yao Ming, or even something more horrible like Drazen Petrovic. Like, their stories are defined by the last thing that happened to them was, in some of the cases I said, devastating injury. In the case of Drazen Petrovic, a horrible car accident and untimely death. And that sucks. Like, our legacies get flattened over time if we're public personas. And Prism, like Rewinder, like Beef History, is an attempt to sort of extend the accordion and say, like, let's walk back through history. Let's walk back through not interviewing these people, using only public information. Let's walk back through the archives to remember what it was like to watch these people, to be fans of them, to read about them at different points, to think about them, to care about them. And it's fun. It's really fun to go back and really relive all that stuff, especially as someone who does remember some of these things, and to try to make that feeling of caring about these people and watching their careers, to try and sort of recreate that.
Yeah. Now when you Google Kyle Lowry, it's just a lot of disturbing Google images of photoshops of him in jean shorts.
No one was talking about his butt in 2010, or they were, but they were really
sleeping on his butt. I mean, yeah. it's quite a butt. Now, I'm going to assume that you don't look up YouTube comments because you're a person who values your mental health. But I did want to bring one to your attention that I saw earlier today. I was watching the Scottie Pippen Charles Barkley beef video, and the top liked comment, I'll give a direct credit because the name is also very good. It's not Terminator, but Termeownator, so some sort of cat joke, as YouTube is known for. And the comment is, Barkley had the roundest head in the NBA at the time. Pippen had the longest. The beef was destined to happen. Can you shed any light on whether or not the shapes of their heads was the main contributing factor to that beef?
I mean, first of all, that's true. That's so accurate. And it's not just that Pippen had the longest head. Scottie Pippen has a rectangle. I feel comfortable saying this myself as a fellow rectangle head. Scottie Pippen has a rectangular head. Yeah, who might argue that should be the top comment? That's extremely insane. Like, I wish I wrote that. I wish I made that the entire thing. I haven't seen. I do read those YouTube comments because I think we get a better sample of YouTube comments than baseline. B, I am psychotic and come from a background of like running a blog myself and reading all the comments and being the moderator. Sometimes you get good idea. I don't know if I was doing letters or numbers, but third item on the list, sometimes you get good ideas out of there or find mistakes that you made and stuff. So it's mostly been worth it to me, and I can get through the anti-Semitic stuff just fine at this point.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's always a fun part of the internet as well. But when it comes to having ideas for it, obviously you would have to have the process of thinking about what would make sense for a video, and then not just having the idea, but deciding what works and what doesn't. I'm sure there's lots of ideas that you decided either don't have enough content for a video or just aren't the right fit. How does it go from just the idea of something to knowing that this is something worth putting all of the time, research, and effort into and making a video out of it?
It's sort of alternating. I think the short answer is that we have each other at Secret Base, and I have editors and coworkers. And so we have a very good, is this a thing, meter at this point. And that usually starts as an individual. So like before I'm going out and pitching stuff to our executive producer, Will Bukema, or to my coworkers as, fellow opinion havers, like I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm going to go and try and just outline, usually it'll start. I saw one thing. I was like, damn, I just, someone tweeted this old interview of Scottie Pippen, or I remembered something, or often, very often, I'll be doing research on one thing and somewhere else in that newspaper, sports page from 1998, I'm like, well, what's that? And then I'll write it down and pull the thread later. But anyway, I'll give that thread an initial tug just to be like, all right, is this one thing? Is this one news cycle? Is it 3 news cycles? Is it multiple things over multiple years? Is it interesting or is it boring? And I'll try to write a 1-page outline, or at least know enough to talk about it for 90 seconds. And then we have regular pitch meetings. We have Slack rooms where we drop this stuff in and say, I think this is something. And over time, you develop a knack for what people are going to like. And a very good rubric there, besides just what is my boss like, is, would I be into this? Would I want to watch this? Mm-hmm. Would this hold my attention? The more feedback you get, the more you work on this stuff, the more you have a pretty good feel for what's going to work. But yeah, very, very often that initial thread pokes out and you pull it and it's like, this isn't really going anywhere, or I don't care about this, or this is too ugly and I don't want to talk about it, or, this isn't going to be fun. This isn't going to be enriching. And I feel fortunate in that, I think in part because I've gotten good at self-editing. I think we all have, we don't get shut down a lot. Sometimes at a very strapped and under-resourced editorial outfit, you just don't have the bandwidth to do something. That happens a lot. But as long as I'm staying within my wheelhouse, generally I have the trust of the people around me. And if I say something is something, people believe me.
And what is your,
that takes practice.
I'm curious, what is your personal history with basketball? Did you grow up always being a basketball fan? Is it something you got into later?
No, yeah, I grew up a very, very big, diehard New York Knicks fan since I was very little, which I came to. I mean, my dad grew up a Knicks fan, but really doesn't never cared as an adult, but cared enough that he would take me to games. My best friend at the time was a Knicks fan. I had a babysitter who was a really big Knicks fan, so that got me into it as a little kid.
And is this like 90s Knicks?
This is mid 90s Knicks. I'm in my early 30s, and then I kept following the team. I grew up in New Jersey, so it became very unpopular.
Ooh, what part of Jersey? Fan. We're both from New Jersey boys as well.
Yeah, from North Jersey, Morris County.
Nice.
Oh, okay, nice.
I'm a Somerset County guy.
Nice.
And I'm Mercer.
Nice. You can tell I'm from Morris County because I say Morris County.
Morris County. Yeah.
But anyway, as maybe you guys know, the Nets got pretty good around the late 90s and early 2000s, and the Knicks not so much, and all my friends became Nets fans. But I stuck it out with the Knicks. And when I was in high school, and like sports blogging was starting to become a thing, I just kind of started it as a hobby. And around the time I graduated high school, SB Nation came into existence, not as anyone knows it now, but as just like a little network of amateur team bloggers. Amateur enough that they were like, hey, 17-year-old, would you like to start our New York Knicks website instead of doing your little Blogspot blog? And I said yes. And that was, and still is, Posting and Toasting, the SB Nation Knicks blog, which I have not been part of for a while, but it's still
so they didn't make you go to college for 1 year before bumping you up to the pros?
No, but I did that throughout college. I missed a lot of parties and opportunities to stay up late watching and recapping Knicks game, and we're talking like 2009 Knicks games. Like,
we're talking the rough era.
Really,
these are the dark times.
Bad Knicks games. And I did that throughout college. I went to college with no intention of working in sports or media, but was through the work and attention I had gotten by doing this Knicks blog, was offered a little bit of part-time work at New York Magazine, was offered, during this time, SB Nation became bigger and there was actual money and capital and investment. Vox Media, I think, didn't exist until I was out of college. But anyway, there was some professional elements starting to get baked into what had previously been just a bunch of like lawyers and children. And so by the time I graduated college, I was like, fuck it, someone's paying me to write about sports. Why would I go to grad school for neuroscience if I can just keep doing this? And then 16 years later,
wow.
I don't know how long ago I graduated college, but here I am.
It's awesome. A lovely journey.
And I don't do the Knicks blog anymore because SB Nation team bloggers are not getting the best deal out there and are mostly doing it for the love of the game. But I was one of the fortunate few to get a full-time job. And like I said, that job has gone from social media bullshit to now I get to do something that I really like doing and work with people I really like.
I mean, I did go to college specifically wanting to work in sports, and now I'm a stand-up comedian who talks about basketball once every 2 weeks. So did it work out?
So
Who can say? I guess I did.
That's a yes.
Yeah. Did you come up with the name Posting and Toasting? Or
Walt Frazier came up with Posting and Toasting, but yes, I chose that as the name of the blog.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Of all the SB Nation team blogs, because they all have fun little quirky names and stuff, I remember being I was always proud. I was like, well, we've got the best named one. Posting and Toasting is perfect. So to know that you're behind the name of it, that's just fantastic. You can't beat it. Clyde Frazier's a perfect person.
Another thing is the Utah Jazz blog, which honestly, I haven't checked this if it still exists after the most recent layoffs, but if and when we had an Utah Jazz blog, it's called SLC Dunk, which is a pun off of the weird 90s movie SLC Punk.
Wow.
And I came up with that one too.
I mean, if you were more of a narcissist, you could have gone with Thal is life, like, the end of Rosenthal.
That would have made it tough to leave after 10 years. But,
you can't really hand that off unless you find another Rosenthal. Now, if you don't have an answer for this, that's totally fine, because before we were recording, you mentioned that you're not as caught up on current NBA stuff. But if you have an answer, I'm very curious. Of any, I guess, tandem or duo in the league right now that is harmonious, are there any that you think could be future Beavs?
Okay. I mean, tandem is what you said. The first thing that comes to mind is I am watching what's happening with the Washington Wizards very intently. For if you like, Spencer Dinwiddie and Kyle Kuzma. I mean, Dinwiddie's not on the Wizards anymore, but like there's something going on there. I was just remembering that they had been fighting each other like on the bench, and like Denny Avdia got into it with someone last year. So, you know, the thing with beef is that like if there's if it's just a melee, then it's hard to turn that into beef history and make the little thumbnail with two people's heads. Right. Usually you can figure something out. I mean, listen, every time James Harden is on a basketball team, you got to wonder if that ends poorly.
Yeah. You could do a beef history of James Harden versus commitment
co-stars,
or consistency
or razors.
Yeah. I think that long term, I wonder if we're going to reflect on Kyrie and someone else on the Nets, or the ownership of just the Nets in general as being,
or the Jewish faith, you know,
or anything. Just common decency, or like
keeping his mouth shut,
science and history,
reading comprehension.
The Mavs, I wonder if Jason Kidd or Luka Doncic is going to be the subject of a beef history. The thing with all these is like, I don't have to know the answer now. Whenever I see something, I'd like put a pin in it. Sometimes I'll set a little Slack reminder for like 3 years in the future.
Oh, that's
like, hey,
smart.
check in.
Just like a schedule send. Hey, are Steph and Clay still getting along in 2028?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, those are the immediate ones that come to mind. I mean, I mostly watch the Knicks right now, and like Julius Randle and Evan Fournier is not enough of a story, not enough of a like relationship to be interesting. But like, man, those guys so obviously despise each other. Yeah. And they're professional about it, and they merely like sneer at each other on the court. And Evan Fournier is not really playing anymore, but like, holy cow. Yeah.
But for more on that, just Google the word Fournier. It'll work out fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No problem there.
Yeah. In case anyone, do not Google at your own risk. I still have successfully never Googled it.
I think if you Google Evan Fournier or Google why can't you Google Evan Fournier, I think an article I wrote about that still pops to the top. And I promise that article will not hurt you if you really want to know the answer.
We'll link to that article
about.
in the episode description, and I will read it because I've never truly known what the result of it is. I just know that his nickname is Evan, don't Google me, Fournier, and I've never ever Googled him, and I just fear it being in the blue waffle era of the area of the internet.
Weirdly close.
Okay, that's what I see. That's what I figured.
No, well, now I have to Google blue waffle because I don't know what that is.
Okay. Now, with your current Knicks fandom, obviously we've talked about
speaking of blue waffle.
Speaking of blue waffle, the New York Knicks. How has it been just over the years of truly a roller coaster of a franchise where, you know, we're about the same age. I'm 30, so I was just too young to appreciate the late 90s runs where we had a shot. Obviously, I couldn't fathom. I was 2/3 when we had the finals run against the Rockets. But we've had our ups and downs. And then we've even had, you know, good teams. We've had the fun teams. We've had the Jeremy Lin era. Now we're in this weird thing where we seem to be alternating being good and bad at basketball with years. And then also in this particular season runs where we do this cool thing where we win 5 and then lose 5 and then win 5. And the state of the subreddit is just in either utter joy or utter turmoil at any point. Just as a Knicks fan today, what is it like for you, especially as you were saying, you're kind of really just watching the Knicks and not a lot of other teams right now?
Like, I have found a much healthier place with being a fan than I ever had before. I have a pretty, I think, unique relationship to the team because not only have I been a fan for a long time, but I was running a blog for exactly 10 years of that. So not only did I care deeply about the team, and that really didn't relent during that period. It only got worse, if anything. But like, I felt sort of beholden to what was happening with them. I felt like it was my responsibility to describe what was happening, to explain what was happening, to sift through and, in fact, moderate the way people were feeling about that. You know, SB Nation blogs at their best have been it's not just a couple people talking about the team, but it's actually a whole community of commenters who are really familiar and know each other. It's a lot like a subreddit. And, you know, when it's been nurtured and taken care of, it's a pretty cool place to go watch a game and follow a team. That's a whole other thing. But point being, I was part of that. And in fact, sort of like the magistrate of it for a decade of my life. not just a decade of my life, but being between 17 and 27. So like I became an adult as like not just a Knicks fan, but like a public facing Knicks fan, where I had to constantly interrogate and in fact like perform my Knicks fandom a little bit. And I couldn't be a fan exactly the way I wanted to. I needed to really understand the salary cap. I really needed to understand, the triangle offense when that was my problem to deal with. And I really had to understand the relationships between people. And I had to follow the news because I wanted to be a good blogger. And I couldn't skip a game. I couldn't like just throw out my hands. I did find a way to do that now and then, but like I really was formally attached to the team. And that led to like, I got interviewed for jobs with the Knicks. Like it's my point being like, I've had a very different relationship to being even a diehard fan of a sports team than your average Bear. And so the last few years for me have been, first of all, I stopped doing the Knicks blog, which I miss in many ways. It was a lot of fun. I got a lot of attention and I love that. But like, mostly that has been a relief of when the Knicks are playing like shit, I turn it off. And I don't care, and if they never came back from their 20-point deficit, I'm not going to go find out what happened. I just move on. And if stuff comes up in my life, I don't need to figure out a way to do both things. I'll just ignore the Knicks for a little. And mostly I don't. Mostly I still pay a ton of attention to the Knicks, but it feels healthier. And I think something that's happened since then is that I had a very specific moment where I like stepped back and told myself I care about this too much for an adult. When the Knicks draft, I'm a big draft guy.
Okay.
Which is to say, it's my like problematic fave. Like the NBA draft is a horrible thing that shouldn't exist. It's terrible for treatment of people and labor and all that, but it's very fun when you're a fan. And I care very deeply. The Knicks have been bad for most of my life, so like obviously I care a lot about the draft. When the Knicks drafted Kevin Knox in whatever year that was, 2019? 2018? One of those. I was so mad. I was so upset.
Really?
I think I really wanted Mikal Bridges that year. I was right, obviously.
You were, yeah.
But like, I watched that with friends. I actually watched it with coworkers of mine at the office. And I was just sitting there seething. And I went home and I laid in bed and I was like, this can't make me feel this way. Like, I'm a grown man. This, like, it's not even the game. Like, it's not even the performance of the team. It's just an off-season transaction that's ultimately probably not going to matter that much. This can't make me this upset. And so I would say in the last, like, 4 or 5 years of my life, I still watch all the Knicks games. I still care deeply about the team. I'm still following them very closely. But I'm really not letting it like mess with me as much as I used to. And I feel very good about that. And I recommend that to anyone.
Yeah. I mean, in seeing the past couple of days, the videos of Cowboys fans punching their TVs and
it's not
go to therapy. This is not normal behavior at all. I mean, Mike is notoriously one of the nicest, calmest people I know. And we live streamed the draft. I guess, was that 2020 or whenever that was? Whenever they drafted Obi Toppin, Mike had like a full meltdown. And I don't know if you still stand by
full
that
meltdown
opinion.
being I just like he
more of a shutdown. I would say shutdown.
Shutdown. I was just it was inevitable. You knew it was going to happen. It was predicted it was going to happen. It was obvious it was going to happen because our team owner is CAA, the agency that he's represented by. Knew it was going to happen. Knew he wasn't going to be good. And this is exactly what I predicted. It was just
that was 2020, right?
Yeah.
So here's how I deal with this stuff now. Instead of whining about it on the internet or like stomping out, because I was also displeased with the Obi, and Obi Toppin's lovely. I've enjoyed watching.
He's a wonderful.
But this
human being.
This is what I did. On November whatever 2020 is I just typed myself a little note and then I sent it off into oblivion.
Just a tweet to no one.
I would have taken Tyrese Halliburton, and look at that.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
But you didn't draft quickly, so.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have called that one. I'm wrong a lot, but
right.
You gotta I have to go to therapy. Don't get this upset about this stuff. There's so much actual stuff to despair over in the world. Don't let the Knicks be one of them, or any team.
Yeah, I had this similar moment, not with the Kevin Knox draft, but it was with the Kristaps Porzingis trade, a similar thing to you, of where it wrecked my day. And then the next day, after talking about it with my now wife, I was like, I gotta change. I went through the legit 7 stages of grief during that day. Like, I was surprised that it happened. I denied that the reports were real. I was angry. I was trying to bargain of why I don't, I was bargaining. I got depressed. I then accepted, and I was like, this is actually going to be good. And I ended up being wrong. Like, ended up being a phenomenal trade for us, and it's seemed to work out, and it could still work out with the picks. But yeah, that kind of moment, I was like, all right, I can't let something that I have literally no control over, absolutely no control, I can't let that make me sad for an entire day. Like, my time is too valuable to be that frustrated about it. And I think it's been a bit of a healthier approach.
Watching sports has to be fun, or you're doing it wrong. It has to be. Why would you invite something else into your life to upset you? And I'm talking to my past self and probably future self to an extent. Like, it has to be.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, but I'm a Chicago fan across the board, and that also means that I'm a Cubs fan, which was a lot like being a Knicks fan for a very long time. And as much as I intellectually know that it is just a game, I don't know if you're a baseball fan at all, but if the Cubs had blown Game 7 of the World Series in the way that they almost did, I genuinely do not think I would be the same person. It would have been that crushing.
That like puts a sour taste. That's like kind of makes my heart sink, the idea of that feeling. Yeah. No, I know that's still in me. I know that's still about. Honestly, like, the Knicks seem like they have a good shot at making the playoffs this season. They've made the playoffs in the recent past, and like, it's interesting to when you go from like, this team just sucks and is boring, to like, they're gonna play a game with stakes. I'm feeling those old feelings come back. I'm starting to get a little
Hello,
too
darkness,
invested.
my old friend.
Yeah, I have said to myself before, and I don't know if I mean this, that if the Knicks ever win a championship, that's it. I stop. That's the end of my fandom. But that's like saying, like, literally, like, if pigs fly. But I don't know.
My approach has always been, if they just win one, like, I don't need a dynasty. I don't need anything. If they just win one before I die, that would be cool. And I don't know. I think the hardest thing, thinking about what you just said, Adam, I've never been in a situation where the Knicks were even expected to contend. Like, at least I've been old enough to like truly grasp with, we actually have a shot. And I don't know, and I somewhat fear what kind of person I will turn into if we like actually have a legitimate shot. Because like, we don't have a legitimate shot. We might make the playoffs this year, cool. When we made the playoffs and we got bounced by the Hawks, like, we weren't going to make it out of the second round. If we actually ever became contenders, I don't know how I would process it. It wouldn't be good. I would be losing a lot of sleep. And if it ever did come to a situation like a Game 7 and then you blow it, I agree with Adam. It would wreck me. It would absolutely wreck me.
My experience has been, I think one fear that I had, because there literally were T-shirts that the Cubs fans wore that were like, just one before I die. But then once you win one, you want to win more. But my experience as a fan, like, I was worried, like, am I not going to care as much once they finally win? And what I've found is that winning still feels great, but the losses don't hurt as much anymore. And I think that's like a really nice place to be.
I would love to be in that.
So I wish that, as much as I love to shit on the Knicks, I do wish that for both of you in your lives.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think, and I don't know if this is the case for you, Seth, but I certainly am at the point now where I think if the Knicks ever did win, there would be a lot of people just happy for me because of the Knicks fandom and how much suffering they've put me through over the years. I got a lot of text messages on the day when Kyrie and Kevin Durant signed with the Nets instead. I was in the middle of a road trip and Kelly was like, you just got 14 text messages from 8 different people. And I was like, what's the first one say? And she said, the first one says sorry. And I was like, Kyrie and Kevin Durant didn't sign with the Knicks.
Yes. I also, like, because the average person who's not paying close attention only hears about the Knicks, on like the news. So yeah, it's like my father-in-law will still, and when I see him, will test the waters and be like, so I saw, and I'll be like, I know, it's okay, don't worry about it. Whatever it might be in a given, or it goes the other way too, where he'll be like, I think I saw my in-laws over Christmas and the Knicks had just gone, what do they win, 8 in a row or something like that? And he was like, Knicks 8 in a row. And I was like, well, actually they lost to the Raptors last night. And I think they're about to have to slide because like, that's all, it's a house of cards. They're not defending that well. These teams, they're like, and he was like, okay, I'm sorry I said it. So
I was just trying to be polite.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trying to have small talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what sports is to 99% of people. Is it's small talk fodder. Mm-hmm. It's pop culture. It's the very fringe of their attention span. And for me, it's like, if you catch me on the wrong day, you're going to be hearing about it for an hour.
Now, before we let you go, something that made this recording not happen and then not happen is that you and your partner are expecting the birth of a child, which is fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I assume by the time this episode comes out, that will have already happened. Now, are you planning on bestowing the curse of Knicks fandom to your kid, or are you going to let them decide?
Seth wouldn't do that to little Walt Clyde Rosenthal. He would never do.
No, I'm way sicker than that. It'd be like Jackie Butler Rosenthal or like Ronaldo
Ron Baker
Rosenthal. No, listen, my wife and I have talked about this. And so the two things here are, one, like I said, like I think it's been important for me before I became a father, this is my first child, to get this very infantile part of my personality under control. And it's not like I was ever like smashing TVs or making TikToks of me like, burning a jersey or anything like that. But I would get a little too grumpy and, it would mess up my day like you were talking about. And I'm glad that I'm in a, pending a future contending team or playoff series when I completely lose my track. I'm glad I got that under control a little bit before I tried to, be a role model for a small person. But no, in terms of sports fandom in general and being interested in sport, so for context, my wife could not care less about sports, could not know less about sports, and has lived alongside someone who, in their free time and their work time is really heavily invested in sports without managing to learn anything or absorb any of the enthusiasm or any of that. She doesn't give a shit and doesn't pay attention, and it's fine. My kid is going to see Knicks games. I'm going to have them on TV. I'm going to talk about them sometimes. I watch tennis. I watch baseball. My kid will get exposed to sports. Liberty games in the summer. I fall asleep watching Yankees games in the summer. Like, stay up late watching the Australian Open this time of year. Just like any parent, you get a feel for what that might be like. But sorry, to answer the question short, no, I'm not going to, I'm not going to get him a little Jalen Brunson jersey and like, take pictures of him and be like, Daddy's a little Knicks fan, but like, it'll be there. It'll be there if he wants it. That's how it was for me growing up. Not even. It was there and I got attracted to it. But like, I think when I reflect on my own childhood, it wasn't like that. Like, I became a really big basketball fan with parents who weren't really, but they were like, cool, Seth's really into something and it's encouraging him to read and write and learn about stuff and connect with other people. Let's take him to a game or whatever. If he wants a book, we'll buy him the book. And I want to do that for whatever it might be. If it happens to be the Knicks, I have some videos you can watch. But like, I think I don't want my kid to grow up to be as like obsessed and just fucked up about being a sports fan as I was, at least in like my early 20s. But if my kid's into it, then they're into it, and that's great.
That's awesome. Well, that's a great approach.
Like, and the flip side of this is like, if he's a Celtics fan, I'm not going to be like mad. I don't care, whatever.
Yeah. No. I think that's a very agreed. I think that's a very healthy approach. It sounds awesome. I'm happy for you and your wife and, future Frank Ntilikina Rosenthal.
Yeah. For all of the Chris Childs you may have.
Oh, perfect. Well, Seth, thank you so much for joining. If folks want to find either you individually or the stuff that you are making with Secret Base, anything you want to plug for the people?
Secret Base is on YouTube. I think we've done enough SEO that we're pretty easy to find at this point. It wasn't always the case. I don't know. Don't follow me on Twitter. Don't look at Twitter.
Anything you'd like to say as part of the Rectangular Head community?
As part of the Rectangular Head community, like, listen, make hats that fit our heads,
Yeah. I don't know if I go full rectangle, but I have a very long face, and yes, I need less hats that have such a vertical component, because then this one is like a nice like flat kind of situation, which I appreciate.
No, there's a market for that, and also to my round heads out there. No, there's no beef. There's no like let's let bygones be bygones.
But if you're a triangle head, fuck you.
Ooh, get out of here! Heads. Turn off the podcast right
inverted,
now.
Upside down triangles, that's fine.
That's
but
fine.
You got the point up top. Get out of my fucking face.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Shout out! Speaking of triangles, as we go, one of the beef histers, you said you made a scalene triangle joke, and I really appreciated it.
I don't remember that, but
I don't remember what it was like.
I think it was the Barkley.
It was the Barkley one. It was Barkley, Pippen, Jordan. It was like, what was this love triangle, or what kind of triangle was this relationship? Was it scalene? Was it another type of triangle? And it's love a good geometry based.
Yeah,
joke.
you don't get to say scalene that often in sports writing.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Let's make it happen more often. Well, Seth, thank you so much for joining. And that'll be it for our fun little interview.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Sure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Horse. Horse is hosted by Adam Amawala and Mike Schubert. This episode was edited by Lee Prin and Kensei Suramaki. The website is by Kelly Beckman Schubert. The art is by Alison Wakeman. The music is by Bettina Campamanes. And the social media is by both of the Horse Boys.
Thank you to our producer-level patrons, Polly Burge, Kendra Hadley, Salvatore Testa, Trust the Process, Siobhan Ellsbury, He Sells Seashells, Don't Go Chasing Taco Falls, Bang, Bang, Roast Beef Debris, Cade the Conqueror, Basketball is Life 2, Michaela Loves Allison, Denver Steamed Nuggets, Anna Borgelli, Weird Questions, Stephanie Curry for 3.
Bang everywhere you bang.
Everywhere You Bang is a different show, I think. That's an incognito window show. Lobster Bisquet, Hi Trish, Ginger Spursboy, Nicole Arsenault, Something Mean About the Knicks, Stubby Boardman Gets Paid, and Chase Underrulo. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Horse Hoops, and on Twitter at Horse_Hoops, because
Horse Hoops has a triangle head, and they had to get rid of their Twitter account because of it.
What's a triangle head?
Oh, just because we didn't we say like rectangle heads and circle heads in the Seth interview?
Oh, I think you're right. Good memory. Gosh, it's when we record not the same day as interviews, I completely forget everything that we talked about. But all that to say, you can go ahead and go to our website, horsehoops.com, for links to some of the fun stuff we talked about with Seth, as well as Shannon Sharp's thoughts on the Ja Morant situation.
Yes, and if you would like to support the Horse Boys, you can do so in a couple of different ways. First, you can come to our live show. Go to bit.ly/horse3123, all lowercase horse, and then the numbers 3123 for the stream, which you'll also get a replay access to it. So if you can't watch it at exactly 7 p.m. Eastern time on March 1st, that is okay. You can also go to our Patreon, patreon.com/horsehoops, get a lot of bonus content, get some physical merch, a whole bunch of goodies over there. And then you can also get other merchandise at horsehoops.com/merch. But we're going to close out this episode by putting our hands in the middle and saying something on the count of 3. What are we feeling?
Well, I'm going to be watching the Super Bowl. It sounds like you're not going to be, but it does sound like we're both going to be eating food during the game, even if we're not really watching it. So I think just a buffalo chicken dip on 3 feels like the right move.
Yeah, buffalo chicken dip on 3. I like it. All right. 1, 2, 3. Buffalo chicken dip. Yeah, the real winner.
We said it differently. That's fun.
Look at us go. The whoever wins, if you eat, you can't lose. Have some snacks.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Hopefully,
I'll be rooting for Rihanna.
Ooh, yeah, there you go.
Ooh.